Hello, friends of Herbie. Welcome to a new episode of the Campfire Talks with Herbie. Tonight we have a guest that comes from Singapore, and I'm grateful for his willingness to come on live at this time. I think it's around 2 o'clock at night there. So it's a great effort and we appreciate that. Let me introduce you to Sandeep Joshi. Hello, Sandeep.
Hello, Steve. Good morning, good
Welcome.
evening. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and welcome to the show and to this Campfire Talks with Herbie. Now, Sandeep has been involved with Agile since a long time and has a long career in this field, and he will tell us more about that. But I want immediately to highlight that he's the author of a manifesto, which he will tell us more about later. So, Sandeep, tell us, who are you?
Oh, that's a tough question. Thank you for introducing me briefly, Steve. I'm basically, a learner and explorer. My goal is to transform individuals and organizations towards sustainable high performance, and that's what I have been doing. I think since last 15 years or so. um, I usually, my forte is basically, the enterprise strategy around the program and product management, and I'm an advocate of transformation for the purpose and intent. So that's pretty much what I do as an author, as a speaker, as a community leader. So I run a community for sustainable agile in Singapore. I also used to run a .NET community previously, and that's why the title MVP in everything that I do, it stands for not the minimum viable product. It stands for most valuable professional. That is an award that Microsoft used to give for the technical excellence and technology people. So I got that for a couple of years. I think the first time I got was in 2004, and since then, until 2016, I used to get it. So it was like a continuous technology journey that I had. Currently, I'm working as an enterprise transformation coach and advisor to leaders. So a lot of my time is spent with the C-suite people and the senior leadership, coaching them around, some of the things that they can do to transform their people, their organization, their processes, and making it more sustainable. Uh,
You,
yeah.
you just mentioned your website. Let me just bring it up here. So it's Sandeep MVP. But now, of course, with all the talks of minimum viable products, you can certainly repurpose that like that. This is Sandeep minimum viable product, very agile.
Very agile. Yeah, I mean, it gives a different perspective altogether. Yeah.
Okay, Sandeep, you have been involved in this for quite a while. But when did you get involved? How did you get involved with agile organizational performance and so on? And also, what I'm very curious about, how did you find out about TameFlow?
Okay, that's so. I think by heart, I'm a developer and a software engineer. So I started my journey, or so to speak, my development journey back in 1999 with COBOL, Fox Pro. Some of the things now which are called as legacy or outdated. So yeah, but then I leaned over and learned Java, C Sharp. So my first introduction to truly agile was back in 2005 when we were trying out the Scrum framework with my engineering team, and that kind of was an eye opener for me because it kind of bring back together the concept of team, the concept of working together, the concept of CI/CD in real practice, and the concept of distributed team, and then working in a distributed model. So that was back in 2005, and since then there was no looking back. So after that, everywhere, wherever I find opportunities, or I find people were interested in becoming more either productive or more looking for ways to improve. I kind of vouched for getting into the ways of working as a Scrum, as well as for operations team. I started using Kanban since 2008, and that journey continued. So it was mostly into the technology space. I was working either as a technology manager, as a program manager, or as a technology leader. I think the real coaching journey started back in 2012. So my last role previous to becoming an enterprise coach was a CTO. And working as a CTO, I kind of found out myself that more and more I talk to people, more and more I talk to my clients, I was seeing a gap in the industry. As as if I am promoting agile within my company and within my teams, that is still a limited circle of influence. I just wanted to kind of grow that and then impart that to more people as I move forward. And that's where I adopted that, being an advisor, being a coach allows me to elevate my circle of influence, touch more lives and more people and more team, and kind of broaden the horizon that I work with. So that's where I kind of looked at coaching as my career, and since then it has been truly an enlightening journey. I learned more in last 8 years, I would say, than the previous 12 years. As a coach, you get to meet more people, more new personalities. I think
And
in
now you
terms, yeah.
discovered TameFlow as well.
Yes, so I discovered TameFlow this year. To be, I think, few weeks back or few months back when we first got introduced with relation to my manifesto. I think, and then I started looking at TameFlow, and I was quite impressed. So, in two words, I say it's really simple and beautiful. That's how I describe TameFlow. I really loved
Wow.
it. What I
Uh,
see.
I love that. We should trademark that. No, TameFlow is simple and beautiful. I'll take
Wow, yeah,
notice.
absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, you are actually making a living in this sector through agile approaches. And do you see TameFlow having a role in that as well?
Definitely. I think, yeah, I do work as a, like I mentioned, as an enterprise coach. In terms of, the overall industry, what I see is um, the agile, rather than becoming a way of working, it became an industry in itself. And I think that's where I feel that, we need an agnostic approach, or we need an approach which encompasses what we already got in a way which clarifies the intent and purpose. And I think TameFlow does a really good job at that. So I see TameFlow as a bigger role to play for the community and for the industry as a whole. So I'm looking forward to broaden the impact of not just
Excellent.
not just TameFlow, but also the overall high
So
performing organizations.
you mentioned the community, and I see we have someone coming on board on the comments here. We have Mikkel Kusters, "Go Herbie, go." That's his greeting. And then we have Rudiger Wolf, "Hello from the United Kingdom." And we have Jitesh, "Hello Herbie." So everyone is happy with Herbie here. But Sandeep, tell us something more about yourself. A typical day in your life. How does that unroll?
Oh, you can very well predict. I'm an early bird, and it's 2 a.m. here in Singapore. But my usual day starts around 5:30, and then I generally do yoga. I'm doing that for last, I don't know, I think around 30 years now. So I started doing yoga since my childhood. It was a big influence on how I grew up. So yeah, that generally lasts for an hour or so. Then I go drop my kids to school. 8 a.m. is generally when I come back, and then after my regular routine, I will just go for breakfast. Pre-COVID, I used to take the MRT, the train from to office. But now, given we are all work from home these days, so my office starts early. 8:30, I am generally checking my emails, and then from 9 to until lunchtime, there are back-to-back meetings either or coaching sessions with leaders. Then during the lunchtime, uh, now because I'm working from home, it's becoming difficult to lunch together. Previously, I used to make it a point to lunch together, but most of the time either there are calls or my wife will go and pick up kids. Yeah, after lunch, generally there are meetings until 6:30. Then we do go for a walk. So that is a routine that we started since I'm working from home. We generally take an hour and a half walk in the nearby park. It's also not a lot many people there, so it's safe to go out, and we are only going in two. So I think we maintain the guidelines that the government has for us in terms of that. Generally, 8 o'clock is our dinner time, 8 to 8:30, and then few hours I will watch TV, and then I synthesize my thinking, and sometimes I also practice my singing skills before
Oh,
going to bed alone. Yeah, so I do sing. That is something that I do out of my passion. I'm very passionate about Indian classical music, so that's something I try and strive to learn as much as I can. So
do you want to
that's
improvise and sing something for us?
I think uh, uh, you want to really listen to me at this
Well,
point.
I mean,
Okay.
just give
Okay.
us a spot, 30 seconds to hear your voice. It's something no one has ever done on the campfire talk, but around a campfire you have to sustain the morale. And what is no nothing better than a song, a nice voice.
Okay. All right. So since this is morning, I will try to do something in the morning raga.
Uh-huh.
So Alabela sajana ayo re alabela sajana ayo re. So generally, in when the sun rises, the sun rays from sun to earth, it takes its own sweet time to reach. And when the rays reach to the ground, generally they will hit the tree surfaces at the top, and from there the journey from the top to the actual bottom or the surface of the earth. Actually, that's what is being depicted in this song, and that's why you see the motion and tune like this.
Wow, thank you very much. It's the first time we have a singing performance on the campfire talks. Well, this goes to history. Thank you so much, Sandeep.
Thank you very much. I hope it was in line with what you were expecting.
Yes, I mean, I was open to anything because I never heard that kind of song. So very nice. Hope you didn't wake up the neighbors, did you?
No, no, no. It's kind of I'm sitting in a secluded place.
Okay. So after such an intensive day, now what makes you happy besides singing on a live stream with Herbie?
Yeah, wow. That's this is an experience for me as well. I never thought I will sing with Herbie, so it's truly a privilege. So I think what makes me happy, making an impact on people's lives, and being able to see people grow. I think over last few years, starting my leadership journey and starting being a coach, I mean, it gives you immense satisfaction when people come back and they talk through and then they explain how one of the sessions have impacted their thinking or what they are now able to do with their work. It's amazing to see people grow, and it's amazing to make an impact on people's life. I think that's what makes me truly happy when I look back.
Okay, so we have some more comments. Jitashan, welcome Sandeep, and then I love that TameFlow is simple and beautiful. Yes, that should it becomes a new
Yes.
slogan for us. Yeah. And we have Rudiger, clap for the singing. So you see,
Thank you.
you're getting a fan club already here, the
Yeah, yeah.
Campfire fan club.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, in this career now, what are the skills or insight that you think you have developed while you have been involved in this industry?
Yeah, I think it is one of the skills that took some time for me to digest, or so to kind of learn by experiments. Is when you're talking about coaching, or when you're talking about transformation, it's a bi-directional process. You cannot assume that what you have in mind can be easily translated to a purpose and intent, and people will just follow it. You need a real you need to create an invitation based influence on people's thinking, because that will drive the action. So I think that's what I learned, that you need to really create this process as a bi-directional process, and every environment is different. No matter whether you are sitting with 10 people, the same 10 people, the account might be same, but there are still different people when you go to different organizations, and the context, their dynamics, the way they work together, the teaming aspect of it, right? I mean, and the overall cultural aspect of it, it's really different every time you go. Even though it's a you're talking about the team itself is different. So, and then that changes everything when you are so I think that's what basically also motivates me, that we are doing the same coaching, but the people are different, so that brings in the new aspect of things. And I think culture is what is the key, right? So I mean, people describe culture in different ways. My thinking around culture is the sum total of your actions, decisions, and behaviors. All these three things, what you allow for yourself and what you allow for others to do in an environment, is basically the culture of that particular place, or that environment. And if you don't change that, if you don't change your behaviors, your thinking, and your actions and decisions, your culture is bound to just continue the way it is. That might be a good thing for certain places, but if you really truly want to transform, you need to transform your culture as a point in place. So that's what I think, one of the things that I learned. And it took me, it's because I mean, coming from a technology background, obviously you intend to use what you know best, and I used to know tools and technologies as best, right? I mean, one of the key things that comes to my mind is use this, use that. But it's not about supplementing, it's about transforming from with an intent, from hearing your inner voice. And that can only come when you create a bi-directional process and an environment where people can experiment and trust each other.
So, in this career path, and like looking forward, what do you think are the greatest challenges that you see in the sector, and do you think that TameFlow could play a role in that?
Oh, that's a difficult question because I think based on where we are, um, every leader in the world is trying to make sense of what is the greatest challenge now, because what we knew in January no more valid. What we knew in March is no more valid. So things are changing at a speed nobody ever imagined. and nobody ever thought is possible. So I think based on where we are, I think the greatest challenge we face today is about in this post-COVID era, where do we pivot? What does it entail for an organization? Because it needs a new mindset, new approach, and new ways of working to set the world for a better together approach. I would say it's our chance to create new direction for the mankind. I believe because I think somewhere, and I think this is one of the reason why I was inclined to create something that the manifesto that you kind of highlighted, and the global growth history. I mean, if you see how we have been looking at the industry overall in last 2 decades. Or even before that, capitalism is at the forefront with little or no consideration around sustainability, or without truly understanding the impact on the earth or the natural ecosystem. The story around getting faster, better, cheaper for business, it has to evolve. I mean, it's not just about getting faster, better, and cheaper. It's we need to understand and ask the question, for who? Getting faster for who? Is it just for the business, or is it for your customers? Is it for your employees? Is it for your stakeholders or shareholders? For who? So I think the key missing point, or the invisible part in this equation, is getting better together for everyone. So how you include everybody in your growth story and create new growth oriented model, I think that's one of the challenge of our time and what leaders are facing today. And I think one thing that clearly will guide this path, and companies who will stay relevant and successful will be by those who define purpose beyond profit. I think that's really important at this point in time, and bring sustainability as their mainstream narrative rather than a nice to have thing, right? I mean, most of the time when we talk about sustainability, people talk about philanthropy or charity. We need to go beyond this, and I think bring it to mainstream, embed it into your business model and business purpose. So that's, I think, the path that I see. In terms of the second part, how does TameFlow can play a role? I think TameFlow's two key, kind of pattern, so to speak, is the first one is the inspired leadership. I think the term itself is, when I read this term, inspired leadership, that gives me a lot of motivation. The number two is unity of purpose. I think these are very, very, key things that has the potential, if used properly and with the right intent, I think has the potential to guide us through a better world in the coming time. So I think I see TameFlow can play a really, really big role in the coming days to guide the path for organizations in terms of how we can lead this together.
Yes, thank you. So, can you tell us about what rewards you have had, both professionally and privately, and which rewards would you still like to receive in the future?
Okay, that's so professionally. I think my biggest reward, like I mentioned, I always feel passionate about community. It feels really great giving back to the community if you can do something about and you can share with people. I think sharing and caring, that value is really important, and I'm living that value since 2002. I think my first award I still remember was Community Star Award given by Microsoft in 2002 when I started the .NET community in my local area. And since then, there was no looking back. My award, most valuable professional award over the years since 2004. I've been doing community session. I lost the count now, but I think it's around 300 plus community sessions across Asia Pacific at various places. So thousands of people I kind of spoke to through conferences, through these community events. I think that gives me immense, satisfaction. I think and that is my greatest reward, right? Helping people, finding them, getting on a successful career path or successful journey towards their own, goals. I think that's what makes me really, really feel, and that's I feel great about it. I think personally, I feel my greatest reward is my family, my two kids, my beautiful wife, and having. I mean, I'm thankful for them to bearing with me, actually, and
Wonderful.
keeping up with me. Yeah.
So you just mentioned the word community many times. So I gather that the community aspect is really important for you. And as you know, we have a Tame Flow community, which for those looking and if they might be curious, they might join with the URL that is coming up down there, https://community.tameflow.com. Now, what is it that you're looking for in a community of peers like we are trying to make out of the TameFlow community?
I think from the community, I'm really keen to learn and explore how we can declutter the agile narrative or the overall transformational narrative, not just particularly agile, but the overall transformation narrative, and how we can pivot from here to a better alternate or better ways of working. So that's what one of the area that I am really interested in. I think the second area that I generally look forward to hear from communities around how do we build high performance in a vendor driven environment. I think we all know that there are most of the technology side of work. If you see, around 60%, I would say, is vendor driven, right? So no matter which company we go to or which enterprise we work with, uh, the uh, the IT part or the services part of the IT is generally vendor driven, and it's really important to tackle that area properly, because I think we haven't been able to crack that yet, with whether you call it DevOps or whether you call it Agile or whether you call it XYZ. The point is, with we were not able, we are still there are still struggle there. Still contracts are written in certain way, still things are done in certain way. So there is a gap, I would say, at how things are perceived versus how things are executed. And I think that is an area which I generally tend to learn from peers, and I rely on community to give us guidance, because there is no better way to handle a problem than real life experience.
Excellent. We have received another comment here from Jitesh, and he says, I can relate to the solution mindset as a technology leader myself. You cannot change culture with a solution. Culture is an emergent property of mental models and actions. What do you think about that?
Beautiful. I think absolutely on his spot. So that's what I mentioned, right? I mean, we, from a technology mindset, a solutioning mindset, we always try to apply what we already know. But culture is about exploration. I think he summarized it really well. It's an emergent property of mental models and actions. So absolutely. I think I would just say, so mental models and actions and also behaviors, right? So behaviors might not always be actions. So I think
Yes,
that's really good. Yes.
very good. So typically at this point, I was forgetting now. We have to ask you, where can people get in touch with you? We already showed your web address, sandeepmvp.com. Most valuable person. I have learned that that means now, because you are clearly a person of value. But if people want to reach you, what are the endpoints, so to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest is my website. But apart from there, you can find me on Twitter also. My Twitter handle is Sandeep underscore MVP. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Again, the same goes Sandeep MVP, and you will be able to find me on any of the platform. So, I mean, in Microsoft, we have a saying with the MVP community: once an MVP, always an MVP. And I kind of taken that literally and added MVP.
So you write
added,
that everywhere.
yeah.
Okay. So that's dedication to a cause and a mission.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So now typically I would ask you to ask me some questions, but Sandeep, you have done this amazing contribution to the industry, which is the manifesto. And I would like to introduce to the TameFlow community your manifesto. So allow me to do this. I want to show this screen. Let's maybe make it big. And well, I will read this for the folks here. This is the Manifesto for Sustainable Agile. As we continue to uncover better ways of working and delivering business outcomes, we have come to value co-located minds over co-located people, collective outcomes over individual outputs, speed to value over speed to market, empathy and trust over command and control. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Now, of course, this is structured according to the original Agile Manifesto, but the content is very well original and different. And while as a Tame Flow person and the Tame Flow thinking does not endorse any other particular approach, because Tame Flow is very generic, it's pattern based, it can be used with any other approach. Notwithstanding that, I really like the way you have framed this manifesto. I mean, it maps very strongly to what we do in TameFlow. We have like the co-located minds that corresponds to the shared mental models which we teach to develop in TameFlow. The collective outcomes, well, of course, that is very close to the unity of purpose. The speed to value, well, TameFlow is born in terms of delivering hyper performance. In the first book, I was talking about hyper productivity, but I then understood that performance is a better framing. And we do so by focusing on throughput, on the operational and financial throughput, and our four flows in general. And lastly, empathy and trust. Well, isn't that the community of trust of TameFlow? So yes, I see what you mean when you say it's all simple and beautiful. That's what we have with your Agile manifesto. Sorry, your manifesto for sustainable Agile. And yes, with TameFlow. So tell us more about your manifesto. How did it come about, and what was your driving motivation to write this?
I think since I started the journey for coaching back in 2012, like I mentioned, one of the things that I realized that every time I engaged in a transformation, um, until the excitement fades away, or until the initial the journey, um, you might be able to get through very quickly, maybe in a year or so, but it was really hard for sustaining that level of performance when things change. So it was, always run with an end date in mind, or it was always run with a program kind of construct. And that got me thinking. So after doing that for a few years, around 2015, I started looking at how can we sustain this transformation, how transformations can stick for a longer duration, and how it can become the new way of working truly for people. And that's when my first thought process around sustainability got into my mind. And I started researching, I started reading around, I started reaching out to people. So last 4 or 5 years I've been kind of keeping this idea to myself. And some of the people that whom I admire, I reached out to them in industry, and kind of getting their thought process, meeting people during conferences, meeting people during my events, and kind of bouncing these ideas. I think since this beginning of this year, as this crisis has changed our world upside down, I would say this became more urgent. And I started to kind of codify how does it, you know what will be my if somebody asks me what does it mean if you say sustainability in practice or sustainable transformations in practice, how do you simplify your message and thinking? So that's when I started putting down together how we can crystallize four challenges, and those four challenges are around how we can reimagine a better way of life through open minds and growth experiments. How so that reimagine part, having open minds, and then working together is really important rather than being together in the same room. So that feeling of working together I wanted to put together, and that is what my first value is: collective minds over co-located people, or co-located minds over co-located people. So being in the room is important, but being in the process, being in and actively present in the process and contributing to it is critical. And that is basically one thing that COVID has kind of amplified, and also um, uh, given us the proof that it can work. Even though people are now apart from each other, they are more together than before in certain cases. So I think that
Yeah.
yeah, that is first point, the co-located minds. I think the second challenge was around how can we expand the vision, because like I mentioned, you're creating value for whom? So I was thinking, is it creating for me as an individual, creating for us as a team, or creating for everyone as a society? So the just broadening that value around how do we create collective outcomes for the society, for the company, and for the business in general, where we can look at all the stakeholders. I think the third one is shift from a profit driven to a purpose driven, and making sustainability a mainstream business outcome. And that's what is the speed to value versus the speed to market means. Like I mentioned, faster, better, cheaper is not the only narrative that we need to think about. We also need to think about how we can become more purpose driven in today's world, and how we can look at sustainability as core, rather than looking at so especially the kind of businesses that we are seeing, and the struggle that we are seeing, like the oil and gas industry, for example. Do we really need to kind of take so many barrels of oil to increase our profit, or we take a cautious call or judgment, or make a clear judgment around what really makes sense to, what is really important for us to survive and thrive, and also make sure that the natural ecosystem is intact and also growing together with us. So I think that was the shift. And then the fourth one is about sustain, right? So in order to sustain, I think creating an environment of empathy and trust is more important than driving through a command and control kind of hierarchy. And it is proven point, I think, from last over so many years, when you adopt that approach, people generally, have a better interpretation of your intent. I think that is what I understood. If you have empathy towards others, if you can create that environment, people build trust over a period of time. So that was the fourth challenge, and that's how I interpreted that value in the manifesto. And I think you pointed out very aptly that even though it is inspired by the Agile Manifesto, uh, over the last few days when people reached out to me, I think one thing is quite clear, that it is much more beyond what the Agile Manifesto promises. We are still thinking, it is still in early days. So you might see a pivot from what it is, but these values
And
can be applied. Yeah,
and you are you have I know you've just recently also launched a site where you can interact with the people who want to support you, and it's this one, right?
yeah,
Sustainable-agile.tribe.so.
yeah.
So anyone who wants to be actively involved in like shaping this manifesto, because now you have like sketched out these four values, but you are also working on the principles, right?
Absolutely. I think the next steps is clearly working through the principles, and then giving guidance around how these values and principles can be embedded to any existing ways of working or any new ways of working or in any framework. So we want to keep it open for all. I think the open source aspect is really key to my heart. So it is open for all. It is for everybody to contribute and make it their own. It's a collective journey. So I don't want to keep the collective outcome as just a principle of the manifesto, but it's a collective outcome for, truly really for the community and everyone. So I think that's how we want to shape this forward.
Yes, and I like to highlight here that TameFlow by design does not include any values or principles. So it's not seeded, so to say. It's not rooted in a manifesto, and it's so by design because we highlight more the mental model aspects, the thinking, the shared thinking, the collective intelligence of building up a shared understanding of the context, the problems, the solutions, and by sharing that understanding, build up the unity of purpose. But of course, any company, whether they are explicit or not, they will have their own values and principles. And what I like about your work, as I mentioned when I read through the wording and compared to TameFlow, it's mapping very nicely to things that are important in TameFlow, like the shared mental models, the unity of purpose, the community of trust, and the performance aspect. So I see this as something that is entirely compatible and synergetic with what we are doing in TameFlow, and I think this could lead to well interesting developments. Like last week we had Rick Kasparowski talking about the core protocols. Now the core protocols, they are pattern based, but they are a distinct discipline that other people practice separately from TameFlow, but they are entirely compatible with TameFlow, and I am actively using them in TameFlow, and in fact I wrote a whole chapter about them in the first book. I see that this manifesto of yours can possibly have a similar framing, that if you are in a TameFlow context, you want to have some good values and principles to refer to. Well, you have the Agile Manifesto, but maybe this one is an alternative to consider because it is probably more compatible with the overall thinking behind the TameFlow patterns and mental and mental models. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that is a I would say again very simple and beautiful approach that you have taken, right? So I think this is definitely an option. I mean, I personally feel that these values, when used in conjunction with TameFlow's approach, I think it can be a viable option for people to use it as an alternate, and they can think through, like you mentioned, right? I mean, you beautifully mapped one on one when you're highlighting, but the idea is to give you a guidance around this manifesto can be used as a value system in your time flow construct, as an option, if you really liked and if you feel, and it is really compatible with the patterns that you highlighted. So you this can serve as a guidance. That's how I would put, and I think it can work well together as hand in hand as a companion for the time flow approach.
So, how do you see this manifesto work of yours evolving? Are you getting traction? Are people interested? Or how are things going to work out?
Yeah, so I, like you mentioned, this tribe site or community site that I have created. So we are getting good traction. We now have around 35 people on this site since the launch. We just launched it around 4-5 weeks back, and we had our first community call on the 7th of July. We are now planning for the next one in the first week of August, and our next targets are to drive the principles together as a community. So we have a Padlet board as well. When you go to this website, you will find the link to the Padlet board where we are kind of asking community to keep the ideas coming, put down their thoughts around each of the values. So I think we are getting good traction. A lot of people have also reached out to me who are not part of the community through LinkedIn or through my Twitter. I think one message that is very consistent was this might be the new pivot that the industry is looking for from going forward in terms of overall agile journey or transformation. So we are still thinking as a community, does it make sense to pivot, or how does the new shape will look like? So still haven't finalized anything, but it's still in thought process. So, but yeah, we are getting good traction. I think people now are understanding. So I also participated in the business agility conference in July, and I think this wasn't a planned topic there, but the moment I introduced it in one of the lean coffees, uh, in every all 3 days, people kind of requested, and it became a topic on its own. So that was kind of the testimony of, is it really people are willing to talk through and interested are. So I think this is getting some pretty good traction, I would say, and I'm hoping that more and more people, like-minded people, join the community and help shape this together.
Okay, so we're inching closer to the end here, but I wanted to give you also the opportunity to to ask something about TameFlow. Is there anything in particular that you would like me to address regarding TameFlow?
I think one aspect that is very very near to my heart, and I kind of alluded to it, which goes back to the sustainability aspect as well. What I saw in my experience and from various stories around transformation is any transition of leadership, right? When a leader comes in, he has a transformation agenda, he has a vision in his mind, he or she, and then they drive that agenda and they start their transformation journey. But this journey generally comes to an halt, or generally does not progress as fast as it would when the transition happens, when the leader goes to another organization, or where leader goes in another role. So how what are some of the approaches that we can use for this kind of situation, leadership? How do we handle leadership transition? What is our guidance?
Right. Well, it's a very tough question, of course, because the drive to transform and introduce huge changes in an organization typically come about when there is a new leader, especially at the very top, at the CEO level. And it's natural because if you are the CEO and you are taking over, presumably there is a reason. Maybe the board is not satisfied with the results, and well, they fired the previous CEO and put a new one there. Or there might not be such drastic reasons. Maybe just the previous one retired because of age or wanted to pursue another career. That in any case, when a new leader comes about, they want to prove that they know their stuff. And what better way to show that they know what they are capable of than showing better results. So there you have the drive to improve, to do better, to, as you said before, faster, cheaper, and better. So that is a natural reaction for leaders. But what can we do in terms of continuity and sustainability? Well, first of all, if the change is not at the very top, then provided that TameFlow has been adopted by this company, I would think that there will be no major upheaval, simply because in a TameFlow driven company, everyone from top to bottom are sharing these same mental models. So the newcomer that comes in somewhere in between the top and the bottom will probably very quickly learn the ropes and acquire these shared mental models and integrate very swiftly in the existing organization. But the real problem is what happens if it is the very top, the CEO who has the authority to overrule any other decision within the company. That is the challenge. So there you will see how strong the community of trust and the unity of purpose is in the entire organization. If TameFlow has had a chance to so to say, grow the roots, then I think the people in the organization will, how can we say this, inform and educate the new leader about the approaches they are using and actually have the arguments to counter any idea of greater change that might be in the TameFlow perspective, so with focus on flow, focus on throughput accounting, and so on and so forth, might not have the desired coherent outcomes. So it's just as when we consultants, TameFlow consultants, have to approach a company and we are trying to reach the CEO. Once we are there, we just ask the fundamental questions that will will make the leader discover what they really want. And typically, because it's a business, they want to make more money today and in the future. So as soon as you have assessed that, you can frame the rest of the conversation in terms of throughput accounting, flow, and the 4 flows, and so on and so forth. And the TameFlow mindset is always that to never dismiss any opinion, but to challenge every opinion and to try things out and measure. So one way to address this is to make it very clear that the organization is trained and accustomed to proceeding with a metrics-based, factual, validated learning approach. So if a new leader wants to try a new thing, well, I can see how the culture in the company will say, yes, that's an idea. Let's test it, rather than say, no, we want to do this, and that's it. That's a good idea. Let's test it, but then let the numbers decide. And if the numbers don't match the expectation, we have to do some root cause analysis, understand why. If they are better, great, then we have learned something and we have improved. But typically, new leaders that do not know about TameFlow will have a very hard time to improve. Why? Because they are not aware of constraints management. Their changes will not impact the constraint. So with that knowledge, you can then explain why the results did not match the expectation and show where you could intervene. And with the same proposal, let's try an experiment. Let's do it the TameFlow way, see what happens, and then let the numbers decide. We should never be afraid of running experiments. If they don't turn out as we wished, we are learning something. So maybe that's a convoluted way, but that's how I see how an organization, a TameFlow organization, can possibly survive a change at the top. Of course, it means they must have unity of purpose and community of trust well, inculcated in the minds of everybody. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it. I mean, having an open mind and experimental spirit, right? That's what we are asking from all the leaders, right? I mean, if we are going back with a theory of constraint and going back with the relevant details and the data around it, right? I mean, there is no better way to prove it rather than doing it and experimenting it. But I think one point that I see, which the people who bring in people inside the organization, your talent onboarding, your talent hiring processes, they also need to make sure that they are mapping the unity of purpose and the mental models in that process to get in the right level of leadership and the right level of cultural fit in the org. Otherwise, if we find a top leader with a very different mental model than what our organization have, you're bound to have two different viewpoints and struggle, right? I mean, it will dramatically change the flow that we might have built over here. So yeah, I think that's I like the overall approach that you summarized. Thank you. So I learned something new. Thank you.
Okay, we are running short of time, so let me just remind the audience here that if they want to delve deeper into TameFlow, well, we have this little book that I wrote with Daniel Dwaron, and this is like the latest incarnation of the TameFlow thinking, especially for the managing of operational flow. And if you want to get that book, you can find it here at tameflow.com/get your workflow book separated by dashes. One more thing, if you need training in TameFlow, you find all the classes at this address, tameflow.com/tameflow-trainings. So I think that's all for this episode. Sandeep, thank you very, very much for being our guest here, and thank you for the first live singing performance on the Campfire. That will go to history. Thank you for your suggestion for that tagline, simple and beautiful, and best of luck with your manifesto. It's really nice to see something like that coming out because it's so aligned and compatible with the TameFlow thinking.
Thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate, and it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm also looking forward to contribute to the community and keep the spirit ongoing.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will be back soon on this channel and show off some more singing.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.